The Persona series of games has been around since 1996, and is one of the most critically acclaimed JRPG series in the world. Starting out with the first game on PlayStation 1, the series somewhat recently celebrated its 25th anniversary in 2021. Over the years, the games have amassed millions of fans and spawned many spin-offs and adaptations, from fighting games to rhythm games, to anime and movies. But which games exactly make up the Persona series, and how good is each game? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you in this video. However, I think this video would be impossible to put together based purely on my own personal opinions. People would inevitably disagree with the ranking, as everyone has a different favorite Persona game. So with that in mind, I decided to use each game's Metacritic scores as a guideline. If you don't know, Metacritic is a website that aggregates reviews from critics and users and assigns a game a score from 0 to 100 based on the average rating. Of course, Metacritic scores aren't the definitive measure of quality, and you may have different opinions on some of these games. That's totally fine, and I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to stick with the Metacritic scores as a way to compare the Persona games objectively. Before I began work on this video, I actually thought it would be a lot easier to put together than it ended up being. Wikipedia has a handy timeline of which games make up the series, so I figured it would be a simple task of writing all the games down, checking their Metacritic scores, and sorting them accordingly. However, it wasn't nearly as simple as I originally thought due to various issues. For example, as you may know if you've watched my video on the history of Persona, the second game in the series is broken up into two parts, Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. Both were released in Japan on the PS1, but only Eternal Punishment was released in English. Later they were both remastered for the PSP, but this time only Innocent Sin was released in English. Because of this, Metacritic only has a score for the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment and for the PSP version of Innocent Sin. This probably means that Innocent Sin ended up lower on this list than it should, just because it was being reviewed as a 2011 game rather than a 1999 one. Another weird part about doing this list that I had to make a judgment call on was what to do with games that were released on multiple platforms and that had different scores for each. I thought about it a bit, and in the end decided to take the average of the scores of each platform for the original release of the game. So for example, in the case of Persona 4, I took the Metacritic score for the original PS2 release, as well as the score for the Vita release of Persona 4 Golden, but didn't include the score for the 2020 PC release or any subsequent releases, as I wanted the review scores to most accurately represent the time that the game was released. Finally, I'm only including games that have a Metacritic score. This means that we'll be skipping such gems as Persona Mobile Online, but I think we all know where games like this would have ended up on the list anyway. I'll also be capturing footage from the best looking versions of the games, since that'll make the video look a bit nicer. This means that even if I'm talking about a PS1 game, I'll likely be using footage from the PSP version. With all of that out of the way, I'm John, and this is every Persona game ranked from worst to best. Number 13, Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight, 72%. Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight is a spin-off of Persona 5, and was released in 2018 for the PS Vita and PS4. The game features the central cast of Persona 5, who are summoned to the Velvet Room by Caroline and Justine, and challenged to a dance-off against their sister Elizabeth's guest, Makoto Yuki, from Persona 3. The game takes place after the events of Persona 4 Dancing All Night. The gameplay is identical to Persona 3 Dancing in Moonlight, which isn't surprising since both games were released on the exact same day. Players choose a character and a song, and then have to hit notes in time with the music using 6 of the face buttons and the analog sticks. Some notes require players to press 2 buttons at once, or hold them for a certain amount of time. Players can also activate Fever Mode by hitting pink rings, which allows them to perform a duet with a partner character. The game does have a story mode, although to a lesser extent than the Persona 4 dancing game, where you can watch cutscenes and interactions between the characters in the Velvet Room, as well as a free dance mode, where you can play any song you've unlocked with various difficulty levels and modifiers. Dancing in Starlight has a total of 25 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 5. It also has downloadable content that adds more songs from other Persona games, as well as more costumes and accessories for the characters. Players are able to unlock various items and scenes by clearing certain requirements or spending in-game money. The game received mixed reviews from critics. Some praised the game's music, graphics, animation, and fan service, while others criticized the game's lack of content, story, and replay value compared to Dancing All Night. The game sold about 13,000 copies in its first week in Japan. Number 12, Persona 3 Dancing in Moonlight, 73%. Persona 3 Dancing in Moonlight is a spin-off of Persona 3 and shares the same release date as Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight. I'm already very tired of saying dancing in something light, but I digress. The game features the main cast of Persona 3, who are summoned to the Velvet Room by Elizabeth. Elizabeth challenges them to a dance-off against her sister's guests, the main cast of Persona 5. The game takes place after the events of Persona 4 Dancing All Night, but before the epilogue of Persona 3. The gameplay is similar to Persona 4 Dancing All Night, and essentially identical to the previously discussed Dancing in Starlight. It also has a total of 25 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 3. Dancing in Moonlight also received mixed reviews from critics, for the same reasons as Dancing in Starlight. It sold about 6,000 copies in its first week in Japan. Number 11, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, 75%. Innocent Sin is a 1999 role-playing game by Atlus for the PlayStation, and is the second entry in the Persona series. The game is a sequel to the original Persona, and is followed by Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, which together form one overarching story. It was re-released in 2011 for the PlayStation Portable, and this version was localized for Western audiences for the first time. The game follows a group of students from Seven Sisters High School in the fictional Sumeru City. They have to face Joker, a mysterious villain who uses rumors to alter reality and cause chaos. The students rely on their personas, manifestations of their inner selves, to fight against demons and Joker's minions. The game uses a turn-based combat system, where the characters summon their personas to use various skills and abilities. Innocent Sin also has a unique rumor system, where characters can use rumors to their advantage or disadvantage. For example, they can create a weapon shop by simply spreading a rumor about it, or they can encounter new enemies or obstacles by likewise hearing rumors about them. The characters can control rumors by contacting people like reporters or detectives. The game also has a fusion spell system, where the characters can combine their personas to perform powerful attacks. Fusion spells can be activated by using specific skills or items in a specific order. Some fusion spells can also affect the plot or the environment. The game has a total of 52 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona and other Megami Tensei games. Innocent Sin received positive reviews from critics. Some praised the game's story, characters, music, and gameplay, while others criticized the game's graphics, difficulty, and localization issues. It sold about 236,000 copies in its first week in Japan. Persona 2 Innocent Sin has one of the best stories and some of the best characters in the Persona series, as well as some of the most shocking twists and emotional moments in the whole series. Of course, the game isn't perfect and has some flaws and limitations. It's very old and dated by today's standards, and that definitely shows in its graphics and interface. Innocent Sin also has some controversial and sensitive content, such as references to Nazism, that may not appeal to everyone. Despite that, it is a very good game and worth playing for those who are interested in seeing what Persona was like before the huge shift in style in Persona 3. Number 10. Persona 4 Dancing All Night, 76%. Persona 4 Dancing All Night is a spin-off of Persona 4 that was released in 2015 for the PS Vita. All three dancing games were released in a package in 2018 for the PS4. The game features the central cast of Persona 4, who are invited by Rise to perform at the Love Meets Bonds festival with her. However, they soon discover that a mysterious website called the Midnight Stage is kidnapping idols and forcing them to dance for an enigmatic entity known as Kanamin. The game takes place after the true ending of Persona 4. The gameplay is similar to Persona 3 Dancing in Moonlight and Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight, although there is far more of an emphasis on story in this game. The story mode lets players watch cutscenes and interactions between the characters as they investigate the Midnight Stage. The free dance mode was also present in this first entry in the dancing spin-off series. The game has a total of 29 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 4, and received positive reviews from critics. Some praised the game's music, graphics, animation, story, characters, and gameplay, while others criticized the game's difficulty curve and some technical issues. Since this was the first rhythm spin-off game in the series, it isn't too surprising that it ranks slightly higher than the other two entries. The game also sold about 95,000 copies in its first week in Japan. Number 9. Shin Megami Tensei Persona, 78%. This is the game that started it all, Shin Megami Tensei Persona. It's a 1996 role-playing game by Atlus for the PlayStation, and is the first game in the whole Persona series. The game was re-released in 2009 for the PSP, with an enhanced port that featured a new soundtrack, a new opening, and a more faithful localization. It also included an entire side story that had been cut from the original Western PS1 release. Persona 1 takes place in the fictional city of Mikage-cho that's plagued by demons and rumors. The protagonist is a silent student at St. Hermelin High School, who, along with his friends, accidentally awaken their persona powers during a strange ritual called the Persona Game. Personas are the inner selves of the characters that give them supernatural abilities. The group then gets involved in a series of events that involve a mysterious hospital, a parallel dimension called the Sea of Souls, and an ancient prophecy that predicts the end of the world. The gameplay features turn-based combat, in which characters use their personas to fight against demons. The game also introduces a system called negotiation, where characters can communicate with demons and convince them to become allies or provide items or information. Persona 1 has two main routes, the Sebek route and the Snow Queen route. The Sebek route is the main story that follows the protagonist and his friends as they uncover the secrets of the Sebek Corporation and its relation to the demons and rumors. The Snow Queen route is an alternate story that follows a different group of characters as they explore an alternate version of Saint Hermelin that's frozen by a cursed mask. The game has a total of 52 songs, including original and remix tracks from Megami Tensei. The original Western release received mixed reviews from critics. Some praised the game's story, characters, music, and gameplay, while others criticized the game's graphics, difficulty, and localization issues. The game sold about 201,000 copies in Japan. Shin Megami Tensei Persona has some interesting ideas and concepts that would later be refined and improved in the subsequent games. The game also has some memorable characters and an excellent soundtrack. However, it's very dated and flawed by today's standards. It's very slow and tedious at times, and it requires a lot of patience and trial and error. The game is also very hard and unforgiving at times, and it can be frustrating to deal with random encounters, especially when traversing the city, and the obscure negotiation system. The original Western release of the PS1 version was heavily censored and localized, although these issues were corrected with the PSP remaster. Number 8. Persona 5 Strikers, 80%. Persona 5 Strikers is a 2020 action role-playing game developed by Omega Force MP Studio and published by Atlus. It's a crossover between the Persona series and the Dynasty Warriors series, and is a sequel to the vanilla version of Persona 5. It was released in Japan for Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4 in February 2020, and worldwide for those consoles and Windows a year later in February 2021. Persona 5 Strikers is set the summer after Persona 5, and follows Joker and the other Phantom Thieves as they investigate a series of strange events involving people all across Japan. The gameplay features fast-paced, real-time action combat. Players can control any of the Phantom Thieves in battle, and switch between them on the fly. They can also use stealth to surprise enemies, or avoid them altogether, and can summon their personas to unleash powerful skills and magic attacks. Players can also use items and environmental objects to gain an edge in combat. The game features a system called Bond, where players can increase their bond level with their teammates by interacting with them, completing requests, or advancing the story. Increasing the bond level can grant various benefits, such as stat boosts, skill enhancements, or new abilities. The game has a total of 45 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 5, and also has downloadable content that adds more songs from other Persona games. Strikers received generally favorable reviews from critics. Some praised the game's story, characters, music, and gameplay, while others criticized the game's difficulty, camera, and technical issues. The game sold over 1.5 million copies worldwide by June 2021. Persona 5 Strikers is a great continuation of Persona 5's story, and it's a treat seeing how the main characters have grown and changed since the previous game. It also features some of the most dynamic gameplay in the whole series, and is a great pick for anyone wanting to spend more time with the cast of Persona 5. Number 7. Persona Q2 New Cinema Labyrinth, 81%. This is the second of two games in the Persona series for the Nintendo 3DS. It's a 2018 dungeon crawler role-playing game developed and published by Atlus. The game is a spin-off of the Persona series and a sequel to Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth, and is a crossover between Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5, and Persona 3 Portable. It was released in Japan in November 2018 and worldwide in June 2019. Persona Q2 New Cinema Labyrinth takes place during Persona 5, and follows Joker and the other Phantom Thieves of Hearts as they get trapped in a cinema that shows twisted versions of reality. There they meet Nagi, the cinema's curator, and Hikari, a girl who suffers from depression. They also meet other Persona users who have been dragged into the cinema, such as the female protagonist of Persona 3 Portable, the investigation team from Persona 4, and SEES from Persona 3. Together, they must explore different movies and change their endings to escape from the cinema and reveal its secrets. The gameplay features a blend of dungeon crawling and turn-based combat. Players can create a party of 5 characters from different Persona games and switch between them at any time. They can also use sub-personas to customize characters' skills and stats, and can explore various labyrinths based on different movie genres, such as superheroes, dinosaurs, sci-fi, and musicals. Combat is turn-based, and players can also use special attacks called unison attacks or all-out attacks to deal huge damage. The game has a total of 94 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5, and Persona Q. It received generally favorable reviews from critics. Some praised the game's story, characters, music, and gameplay, while others criticized the game's graphics, difficulty, and lack of voice acting. The game sold over 89,000 copies in Japan. Number 5. Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth, 83%. Tied at 5th place is the first game in the Persona series for the Nintendo 3DS, Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth. This is a 2014 dungeon crawler role-playing game developed and published by Atlus. The game is a spin-off of the Persona series and a crossover between Persona 3 and 4. It's based on the gameplay of the Etrian Odyssey series, headed by the director of Etrian Odyssey 4, Daisuke Kaneda. The game was released in Japan in June 2014, and worldwide in November 2014. Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth is a crossover game that features the characters from Persona 3 and Persona 4. They're trapped in a strange school with labyrinths full of shadows. They also encounter Zen and Rei, two amnesiacs who are linked to the school's mystery. The two teams have to cooperate to explore the labyrinths and escape. The gameplay combines dungeon exploration and turn-based battles. Players can form a party of 5 characters from either Persona 3 or Persona 4, or mix the groups up. They can also equip sub-personas to enhance their characters' abilities and stats. Players can venture into various labyrinths with different themes, such as horror, fairy tale, sci-fi, and culture festival. They can use a map to track their progress and discover hidden items and secrets. Combat is turn-based, and players can again unleash powerful attacks called boost skills or all-out attacks to inflict huge damage. Shadow of the Labyrinth has a system called Stroll, where you can chat with your teammates and watch scenes that show more of their character and relationships. These scenes can give you new skills or items for your characters. The game has a total of 86 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 3 and Persona 4, and received generally favorable reviews from critics. Critics praised and criticized the exact same aspects as New Cinema Labyrinth. It sold over 254,000 copies in Japan. Number 5. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, 83%. The other entry at 5th place is the second game in the Persona 2 duology, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. This is a 2000 role-playing game developed by Atlus for the PlayStation, and is the third game in the Persona series. The game is a direct sequel to Persona 2 Innocent Sin, which was released in 1999. The game was re-released in 2012 for the PlayStation Portable, but this version was only released in Japan. However, the original PS1 version was released on the PS3 and Vita in 2013. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment is a sequel to Innocent Sin, and follows Maya Amano, a reporter who is one of the pivotal characters of Innocent Sin. Maya is looking into the Joker Curse, which is where people can call their own phone and wish for anything from Joker. However, if they don't make a wish, or wish for something impossible, they're instead killed by Joker. Maya gets caught up in a plot that involves rumors becoming real, ancient prophecies, and parallel worlds. She also meets some of her friends from Innocent Sin, like Tatsuya Suo and Lisa Silverman, and makes new friends like Katsuya Suo, Ulala Serizawa, and Baofu. Combat takes place in turn-based battles, where characters use their personas to fight demons. The game also continues with the negotiation system from previous games, where characters can talk to demons to recruit them or gain items or information. The rumor system also makes its return, where rumors in the city can change things for the character's benefit or harm. For example, if a rumor says that there is a weapon shop somewhere, then that shop will indeed be there and sell weapons to the characters. However, some rumors have the potential to introduce enemies or negative effects. The game has a total of 52 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 1 and Innocent Sin, and received positive reviews from critics. The game sold over 258,000 copies in Japan. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment is a great conclusion to the Persona 2 duology, and it's very rewarding to see how the story and characters from Innocent Sin were continued and developed. It is, however, quite old and dated by today's standards, and that definitely shows in the graphics and interface. As this is a direct sequel to Innocent Sin, it's impossible to recommend it without playing the first part of the duology first, but the two games together are absolutely worth a look at for players who want to experience one of the best stories in the whole series. Number 4. Persona 4 Arena, 84.5%. This is the first fighting game in the Persona series, Persona 4 Arena. It's a 2012 fighting game co-developed by Atlus and Arc System Works for arcades, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The game is a spin-off of Persona 4 and a crossover with Persona 3, and was published by Atlus in Japan and North America, and by Zen United in Europe. An expanded version called Persona 4 Arena Ultimax was released in 2014. Persona 4 Arena is a sequel to Persona 4, and follows the investigation team as they become embroiled in a new mystery on the Midnight Channel. A fighting tournament called the P1 Grand Prix is on the Midnight Channel, where the investigation team members have to fight each other with their personas. They also meet members of SEES from Persona 3, who have also been dragged into the Midnight Channel by a mysterious force. Together, they have to figure out who's behind the P1 Grand Prix and what they want. The gameplay is divided between a visual novel style for the story and 2D fighting for the fighting. Each character has their own moves and abilities, and their own persona that can help them in battle. The game also has a system called SP Gauge, which allows characters to perform powerful attacks called skill attacks or instant kills. The soundtrack has a total of 30 songs, including original and remix tracks from Persona 3 and Persona 4, and received positive reviews from critics. Most praised the game's story, characters, music, and gameplay, while others criticized the game's difficulty, balance, and lack of content. The game sold over 260,000 copies in Japan and over 110,000 copies in North America. Persona 4 Arena is a fun fighting game and a great way to see the characters from Persona 3 and 4 interact with each other and show off their personalities in battle. Number 3. Persona 3, 88%. The third Persona game, simply titled Persona 3, was released in 2006 for the PlayStation 2. It marked a major shift in the series as it introduced many new elements that would become staples of the Persona franchise. The game featured a darker and more realistic tone than its predecessors, as it dealt with themes such as death, grief, and the meaning of life. It also introduced a revolutionary new gameplay mechanic called the social link system, which allowed the player to form bonds with various characters in the game world and unlock new abilities and personas for their party members. Persona 3 has a unique setting and premise. The game takes place in modern-day Japan that's plagued by a phenomenon called the Dark Hour, a hidden period of time between one day and the next where monsters called shadows roam the streets and attack anyone who's awake. The player controls a silent protagonist who's part of a secret organization called SEES, which stands for Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, which uses personas to fight the shadows and prevent the end of the world. The game was critically acclaimed for its innovative gameplay, compelling story, memorable characters, and stylish presentation. It also spawned several spin-offs and adaptations, including an anime series, a manga series, a movie series, and a stage play. Eventually, it received 2 enhanced versions: Persona 3 Fez in 2007, which added a new epilogue chapter and some gameplay improvements, and Persona 3 Portable in 2009, which added a female protagonist option and some changes to the gameplay and story. Persona 3 is widely regarded as one of the best RPGs of all time, and one of the most influential games in the genre. One of the most distinctive features of Persona 3 is its use of symbolism and imagery related to death and the tarot. The game's main theme is Memento Mori, which is Latin for "remember that you will die." The player is constantly reminded of the inevitability and unpredictability of death, and how it affects the characters and their choices. The game also uses the major arcana of the tarot as a way to represent the different aspects of the human psyche and the stages of spiritual growth. Each character in the game has a corresponding arcana that reflects their personality, role, and development. For example, the protagonist is represented by the Fool Arcana, which signifies the beginning of a journey and the potential for infinite possibilities. The game also uses the concept of persona as a metaphor for the masks that people wear to face different situations and relationships, and explores how the characters cope with their inner conflicts and external pressures, and how they grow and change as a result. Another notable feature of Persona 3 is its balance between gameplay and story. The game is divided into 2 main modes, daytime and nighttime. During the daytime, the player can interact with various characters, attend school, join clubs, go shopping, and participate in various activities that increase their social link and personal stats. During the nighttime, they can explore a massive dungeon called Tartarus, where they fight shadows and collect items and equipment. The game also has a calendar system that tracks the passage of time and events, which includes a fixed ending date that adds a sense of urgency and consequences to the player's actions. There are also several branching points that affect the outcome of certain events and characters' fates. Persona 3 offers a lot of freedom and variety to the player, but also challenges them to manage their time and resources wisely. Number 2. Persona 4, 91.5%. The fourth Persona game, Persona 4, was released in 2008 for the PlayStation 2. It was a direct sequel to Persona 3, but had a different setting and cast of characters. The game takes place in a rural town called Inaba, which plays host to a series of mysterious murders. The player controls a silent protagonist who moves to Inaba for a year and becomes involved in the murder investigation. The game introduced a new gameplay mechanic called the TV World, a deadly parallel dimension. The player and their friends could enter the TV world by using a special TV in their house, or by touching any TV screen during a rainy day. The TV world was filled with shadows and dungeons that were based on the victims' personalities and traumas. The player had to rescue the victims before they were killed by their own shadows or by the mysterious figure behind the murders. Persona 4 had a lighter and more humorous tone than Persona 3 despite the, whole murder thing, as it focused more on the themes of friendship, identity, and truth. It also expanded on the social link system of the previous game by adding special events. The game had a more dynamic and interactive setting, as the player could explore various locations in Inaba and witness different scenes and events depending on the weather, time, and date. It also had multiple endings depending on the player's choices and actions throughout the game. Persona 4 was critically acclaimed for its engaging gameplay, captivating story, charming characters, and vibrant presentation. It also spawned several spin-offs and adaptations, such as another anime series, and several of the games mentioned previously on this list. Like Persona 3 before it, Persona 4 received an enhanced version, Persona 4 Golden in 2012 for the PlayStation Vita, which added new characters, storylines, gameplay features, and content. The game is widely regarded as one of the best RPGs of all time, and is one of the most beloved games in the Persona series. One of the most distinctive features of Persona 4 is its use of symbolism and imagery related to the tarot. The game's main theme is Reach Out to the Truth, which is also the name of one of the game's standout battle songs. It emphasizes the importance of facing and accepting one's true self, and overcoming the lies and illusions that prevent one from doing so. The game once more uses the concept of persona as a metaphor for the masks that people wear to hide their true selves from others and themselves, and explores how the characters confront their inner shadows and awaken to their true power and identity. Like Persona 3 before it, players are able to divide their time between gameplay and story. The game offers a lot of freedom and variety to the player, but also encourages them to carefully keep track of time, as it can be very easy to miss events or characters' stories by advancing too far into the game. And number 1, Persona 5, 92%. The fifth, and at the time of writing, most recent mainline Persona game, titled Persona 5, was released in 2016 for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. Like the games before, it featured a different setting and cast of characters. The game takes place in modern-day Tokyo, where a group of rebellious teenagers called the Phantom Thieves of Hearts use their personas to change the hearts of corrupt and evil people. The player controls a silent protagonist who's been falsely accused of a crime and transferred to a new school in Tokyo. There, he meets his fellow Phantom Thieves and becomes involved in a series of heists that target the distorted desires of various individuals and organizations. Like the TV world from Persona 4, Persona 5 introduces a new gameplay mechanic called the Metaverse, a parallel dimension that reflects the collective unconsciousness of society. The player and their friends are able to enter the Metaverse by using a special app on their smartphones. The Metaverse is filled with shadows and palaces that are based on the target's cognition and distortion. The player has to infiltrate the palaces and steal the target's treasure before they're caught by the authorities. Persona 5 had a darker and more stylish tone than Persona 4, as it focused more on the themes of rebellion, justice, and freedom. The game also expanded on the social link system again, renaming it the Confidant system to match the heist theme, and adding new features to combat such as Baton Pass. Notably, Persona 5 also brought back the demon negotiation system from earlier titles in the series. The game had a more immersive and dynamic setting, as the player could explore various locations in Tokyo and witness different scenes and events depending on the weather, time, and date. Like the previous games, it had multiple endings depending on the player's choices and actions throughout the game. The game was critically acclaimed for its innovative gameplay, captivating story, charismatic characters, and stunning presentation. Once again, it spawned several spin-offs and adaptations, such as an anime series and other games on this list. The game also received an enhanced version, Persona 5 Royal, in 2019 for the PlayStation 4, which added new characters, storylines, gameplay features, and content. This game is also widely regarded as one of the best RPGs of all time, and one of the most successful games in the Persona series. One of the most distinctive features of Persona 5 is its use of symbolism and imagery related to the thief and the tarot. The game's main theme is Take Your Heart, which is also the name of the Phantom Thieves' motto. The game emphasizes the importance of breaking free from the chains of society and following one's own path and desires. It also uses the archetype of the thief as a way to represent the different aspects of the human spirit and the stages of personal liberation. Each character in the game has a corresponding thief codename that reflects their personality, role, and development. For example, the protagonist's codename is Joker, their relation to Persona 2, although I'm sure the name was chosen intentionally as a bit of a nod, which signifies unpredictability, creativity, and leadership. The game also uses the concept of persona as a metaphor for the rebellious and defiant side of oneself that challenges the status quo and fights for justice. Persona 5 explores how the characters awaken to their persona and become phantom thieves who change the world. As has become the norm now with the modern era of Persona games, players are given a great deal of freedom to decide how to spend their days, at least when Morgana isn't insisting that they're too tired and must go to bed. And there you have it, every Persona game ranked from worst to best according to their Metacritic score. Were there any placements here that surprised you? Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching!